It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Lisa Alvetro, D.D.S, MSD. She's an orthodontist at Alvetro Orthodontics. My gosh, I'm so excited to get her on the show. She's a recognized orthodontist and lecturer known for delivering the highest standards of care while focusing on the entire patient experience. She has been invited to teach not only in the United States but worldwide as well. Dr. Lisa is well known for her passion in Class 2 correction and most recently as an early adopter of technology with the establishment of Alvetro Orthodontics 3D Lab in 2015. Her dedication to the orthodontic profession led her to become an advocate for 3M Oral Care, for whom she has collaborated with extensively since 2007. She also consults with 3Shape on various development projects and multiple 3D printer companies as a beta tester and advisor. She also conducts an in-office digital workshop for orthodontists and their teams entitled Maximize Practice Efficiency with Digital Workflow. She's received her D.D.S. summa cum laude. My homies don't even know what that means. That means with highest praise. If they knew what that meant, they would listen to another podcast. She comes from the Ohio State University. Remember, if you say now they will hurt you. And completed her residency at Case Western University, so she looks like she's all things Ohio. She currently is an associate clinical professor at Case Western University, where her most recent projects was establishing their digital workflow and 3D print lab. As a firm believer in giving back, Dr. Lisa created several foundations. Smiles of Hope is working with housing, water, education, family, and nutrition in the valley of Tarime, Tanzania. Her foundation, St. Jude Dental Cooperative, is a volunteer orthodontic clinic providing services in St. Lucia. My gosh, we have so much in common. We both have 4 kids. And we both have done charity orphan work in Tanzania.
Excellent, really.
Yeah, and of course you had good pure reasons to do that. I was just a pig. No, seriously, my buddy at the dental school asked me if I wanted to go do that, and I said, "Man, I'm really, really busy." And he goes, "Well, I was thinking after we did that, we could climb Kili." And I'm like, okay, I'm there. So I went there and did the orphanage thing for a week. But really, I just wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro the week after.
How was your climb?
Well, I'm glad I went. I went with Eric Harris, and I completely ran out of gas at 18,000 feet, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And he stood behind me like the Sergeant Marine General from hell, yelling at me for like 2 or 3 hours until I got to the top. In fact, when I look at that picture of me standing at the top, I think Eric is holding me up from the back. But it was just the coolest thing because all the mountains in North America, in U.S. are 14,000 feet. And it's 19,000. And I'll tell you what, that last 2,000 feet, it was 3 dentists and an oral surgeon. And that last 2,000 feet was just killer. Did you climb it?
I did, and I made it to the summit. It took me a long, long time, and I know exactly what you're talking about. That last bit, and I should have trained. I didn't.
You did that without training? Damn.
Because I was leading a big dental team, and I was so focused on that. We saw the last patient, and then I'm like, okay, now it's time to train, and we were leaving the next day. So I went really, really slow, and I had a phenomenal guide. We had a real small guide group, and it was amazing. It was a neat experience, and just getting to even know the guides. God Listen was our main guide, and he was just so patient with me. And
God Listen?
God Listen was his first name.
Godlisten?
Yep.
Damn. I never even heard of that name.
I was in good hands. So it took me forever. I made it. And it was a lot of fun. I'd do it again. So
I just thought it was amazing. And the charity dentistry thing, it turned out it really wasn't that necessary because the fluoride concentration in their water, the ocean is 1.3. So on land, we like at least half of that in the ocean, 0.7. But it's like 4.0 is like the low end over there. It was fluorosis was more the norm than decay. Is that what you saw?
We're more in the interior between like Lake Victoria and the Serengeti, and it depended what village. We're kind of in a very remote area. In some of the areas, they're growing sugar cane, so they had a lot of decay. And in some of the areas too, there's not access to clean water, but you can access coke. So a lot of them that were drinking a lot of soft drinks, it was amazing the amount of decay. So we saw quite a few, there would be
And
lines and lines.
and this is why it's very arrogant and narcissistic of people to make policies based on other people that they've never met or seen or whatever.
Hmm.
Like when I went over there, I wondered why they drink so much Coke, and immediately this MD that worked over there says, "Well, do you want her to go to the well and drink cholera and
Hmm.
die, or do you
Hmm.
want her to get a cavity?" He goes, "I want
Yeah.
her to live and have a cavity." And if you want to save her teeth, you're going to kill her. And it's like it's
Hmm.
all relative.
Yeah.
And it's a lot also this crap about all the child labor laws. It's like,
Hmm.
well, have you ever been to Cairo and seen the 100,000 kids that live in the dump? So you're telling
Hmm.
me that they can't sew for a job, so you'll just fire them. So they're just going to go survive in a landfill. But that fits their little TV narrative
Hmm.
that that they don't believe in child labor. Well, okay, you don't believe in child labor, but do you believe in children living in a dump? I mean, it's
Yeah.
complicated out there, isn't it?
It really is. I think that's the best way to describe it. And sometimes you just can't understand, even though I go over and I've been involved for about 10 years. There's still things like, even I see, you wear glasses, I wear glasses. And I thought, well, boy, everybody must have really good eyesight. No one wears glasses. And they're like, where would they get them? I'm like, you're right. So even though if you've been there and been there a lot, there's still, you see things your own way. And so
You want to hear
those kids,
my dumbest foot in my mouth in Tanzania?
hmm,
I don't know. I
go
can't
for
remember
it.
if it was in Tanzania or it might have been or Ethiopia or Somalia. I'm pretty sure it was Tanzania. And I'm in this school and I'm talking to the teacher, and she got this adorable class, and they look like, I don't know, second graders, little or whatever.
Hmm.
And I said, so is this just a boys' school? And she goes, no, it's for everyone. And I
Uh-huh.
said, oh well, where are the girls? And she looked at me and she goes, they're right there. And I'm looking at it. I didn't get it
Hmm.
because they all look the same. They're all in uniform,
Hmm.
but they all shave their heads
Yeah.
because they didn't want
Hairs.
lice. And she
Mhm.
goes, you walk under a tree, you get ticks. No one wants to be looking for ticks on. So they just shave all their body hair. And in fact, she said, in your country, what is it? Crabs went extinct because people started shaving body
Mhm.
hair. And she goes, for disease purposes, no one wants hair.
Yeah.
And that's when I first realized that half the people I looking at were girls and half were
Yeah.
boys. And crazy. But hey, I wanted to get you on for so many
Sure.
reasons.
Uh-huh.
Not only are you I've done two amazing articles on Orthotown, better bonding and correcting class 2 malocclusions, which I know is your expertise. But my gosh, we have to start with the Smiles Drug Club is in the news like every single
Mhm.
day. It's in the
Yes,
news
it is.
on
Yep.
Dental Town every
Uh-huh.
single day. They talk about it. So I obviously want to start with what do you make of all this?
You know, I boy, it's so hard, I think, for people to, for consumers to understand they're being marketed to. And, the dangers of self-directed treatment. And I think it's funny because I had a friend that was going to say, I think I'm going to do Smile Direct. And I'm thinking, you don't even dye your own hair. You won't even trust, you won't even do that yourself. Why do you think you should be doing your own teeth? And, unfortunately, we're starting to see people come into our office now that have gone through Smile Direct. And, one patient said to me, is it possible that my teeth don't fit together now, that I'm worse off than when I started? And, he's like, I should have known better. And it was interesting because I described to him why what he was doing wouldn't work. He had a Bolton discrepancy with the mandibular excess. With, a lot of times people, and they're adults and they have crowding on the bottom, there's a tooth size discrepancy. And when I explained to him as he was trying to line the bottom up, he's like, well, I should have known that. I should have been able to pick that out. But I'm like, but you're not a professional. You were trying to do this yourself. You were doing it online and, being, if or if not remotely monitored. So, I think there's a lot of dangers in it. And I sometimes will tell people it's kind of like wrinkle cream. You can try it. Some people may look better, I'll still have my wrinkles, and if it doesn't work, what the company will say is, well, you didn't do it right, you didn't use the right wrinkle cream, and then I'll try another wrinkle cream, and I'll keep doing this, over and over again. But that it is very marketed. The thing it's brought, I think, from an orthodontic standpoint, there are people now that are more aware of their teeth than they were before because they're seeing it so much that they almost feel like I have to have straight teeth because I'm seeing it on TV. I'm seeing it everywhere. And so, I mean, I've senior citizens walking. It's like, okay, I'm 75 years old. My crooked teeth didn't bother me, but now that it seems like it's straight and I see it everywhere, now I feel like I need to do something about it. So, it's kind of interesting how it's really brought, aligners and that type of treatment to the forefront of people. But then there's the dangers of it being self-directed.
I know this show is called Dentistry Uncensored, and I have a reputation, but I'm still trying to be protective, especially when it's around sweet ladies like yourself.
Yeah.
But my friends, one that lives like a block this way, another one a block that way, are both orthopedic surgeons. Mm-hmm. Guess what the number one broken bone is in in Arizona? It's a big retirement community, right? We're like the Florida of the West, except we may be just a little dumber over here, a little more hillbilly than Florida. Mm-hmm. But guess what the number one broken bone is?
Huh?
A broken rib. Why? Because the seniors are all down here retiring, and they break the woman breaks her rib during sex. So the point being, they still want to look pretty when they're 80. Yep. And the science, these orthopedic surgeons told me, a perfect 10 to a man is a woman 13 years younger than him. I'm talking about older men. So if you're 93, that 80-year-old Mrs. Cranston across the street is as hot as it gets. And of course she wants Invisalign, and of course she wants aligner therapy. And I remember when I was little, my first great grandma missed 100 by like 6 months, and this next one missed it by like 4 months. And I remember she had this round thing with a powder deal, and she'd put powder on her face, and she'd put lipstick and all this stuff on. And I used to remember blowing my mind because, I mean, she was like 90 years old, but she's still standing there putting lipstick on and powder. And I just, and then one time, about the only time she ever yelled at me is I walked in on her and she was trying to put on her girdle. And obviously she was suffering. And I said, why do you wear that? And she said, because I'd rather look good than feel good. And then she struggled to pull herself into it. So yeah, I mean, I think
there's some truth to it.
I think beauty is just one of those things. So yeah, Smiles Direct Club, that is a major deal. It seems to be a very different. But if we just I want you to take all your orthodontic values and throw them out the window. Which stock do you like better? And the old school Align Technology, which owns Invisalign Nitero, that's partnering with the orthodontist and has been out for years, or the new disruptor Smiles Direct Club that's trying to disintermediate the middleman orthodontist and go directly to the consumer? Who's going to get more play? Who's going to be a bigger thing 10 years from now? Who will have touched more people's wallets?
Boy, 10 years from now. Man, that's a hard question. That is really short term, maybe Smile Direct, because I think they're really, they're in it for the financial gain. Boy, I don't know. You should ask me that question like yesterday so I could think about it. Gosh, I don't know.
And then I want to ask you another question. You wrote, you're really an international expert on class 2 malocclusions. And when you live in the United States, which is, say, only 13% African American, and you go over to Tanzania where it's 100% African, and then you go to Japan where there's no Africans but they have more class 3s. Is class 2, class 3, is it more genetics? Is it more, is that the main crux of these class 2s and class 3s, genetics, since you see variations among the tribes?
I think you're right. It's so much of it is genetic. Yeah, there are some environmental factors, airway and different, but so much of it, because like when we go in Tanzania, where people don't even marry outside their tribe, you don't see malocclusions. You don't see maybe some associated with if they had early loss decay, but a lot of them skeletal. Like you end up with the right size jaws that match your teeth. And so, particularly when you start to see more people of Eastern European descent, which like lives in Sydney, there's a lot of similarities when I'm over in Europe and lecturing with class two. And you're right, then you get to Asian countries where there's not. So I think so much of it, and for me, I've been at it about 26 years now. So there's people like I've treated their parents, and they bring me their kids, and I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I would expect. If you mix, the two of you, what you look like, you can really see that similarity. So.
Yeah, I think Americans lose sight of the fact that, like, if you go to Japan, they're all Japanese. You go to Korea, they're all Korean. Even Poland is 98.5% Polish.
Mm-hmm.
But you come to the United States, you're a Heinz 57 hot dog mustard ketchup thing. Are they getting a lot of data from these tribes that are like 98% are all the same people, and comparing the epidemiology of occlusions and jaw developments? Or do you think they're doing a good job on that?
And I don't know the region that we're at. Even there is not even a lot of healthcare or dental care where we go. So I know the areas where we go and practice, no, because there's just not that. They have a hard time. Even some of the government, you'd go into different regions and they'd give you like the statistics, like how many people are maybe have are HIV positive. I'm thinking you haven't been here in a while, because you could just tell there was so much. Chronic illness that was underreported, but if no one's there to report it or to monitor it. So,
and it's a good lesson in business too. I mean, the first thing they teach you in MBA school at ASU is how all the numbers are wrong. And all the humans are like, but I saw it on TV. I read it in the newspaper. I don't care. I don't care if your CPA gave it to you. All numbers are wrong until proven otherwise. And in fact, I'll tell you what, Africa changed my mind on dieting and exercising, because when you're over here and you talk to PhD weight specialists, they say that that no matter how much weight you lose within a year, you're going to gain it all back in like another pound. And then when I was in Africa, I was talking to, and I love it because when you're there, you're with their dentist, and their dentist. So dentists are always in the top 1 to 5% in education and income. And I said, okay, I don't understand it. We have limited electricity, this, that, limited economy, but you have heavy, overweight, obese people and skinny people. And he said, yeah, well, those are all from the tribe of blah, and those are a tribe for that, And he says that it's whether or not you big and heavy and thick is genetics. And I've lived here my whole life, and I eat the same as but you could he completely. The whole time I was with him, and I think in 3 countries, he just say, yeah, those people, they're heavy and thick, and these people are like little gazelles. And he told me, he says, yeah, I can't put a gazelle on protein shakes and have it grow into a zebra, and I can't put a zebra on a diet and make it a gazelle. And I thought, okay, take me to the first McDonald's you can find, and let's eat to that. But so the other thing I want to talk to you about is AI. AI seems to be the computer, digital. So how many years have you been an orthodontist?
26, going on 27.
And how much has changed just from computer, digital, from 26 years ago?
It's amazing, particularly when you look at how much has accelerated in the past, say, 5 years. But I can remember when I first opened my practice, we had the computer with the floppy disk, and we had a management system that was DOS based, that one person could get on at a time, and you're moving to now with everything being networked and getting rid of going paperless, and it's amazing in my practice life. And I think that's what's hard for people, because so many times people kind of shut down after they graduate and to continue with the technology. So it's what it's opened up for us as as orthodontists and dentists, I think, is amazing too. I mean, every day we have the conversation of how different it is. Even kids that I've treated a couple years ago, or other family members, now we start talking with scanning and digital setups and indirect bondings, and it's amazing how quickly. I think it's changed more in the past couple years than it did even maybe the first 10, 15 years I was in practice, compared to how far it's accelerating now. It seems like as soon as you get something, it's all, there's something better out there, something, faster, better, different software. And it's hard. Sometimes you have to figure out what you really want to concentrate on because it can be so overwhelming.
So, when I got out of school in '87, the biggest brands in dentistry were already made. I mean, Colgate, Crest, Listerine, they were all there. The only new brand that I've seen around the world, obviously, is Invisalign. I mean, I got 4 boys. I mean, I don't care what country we're eating at. The minute someone finds out Dad's a dentist, it's an Invisalign question by a waitress that's that tall.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest thing. And it seems like when I talk to any dentist, any orthodontist that I know, well, you would know instantly that they're an alcoholic and that we're at a bar drinking, and it's about 20% of their practice. Most of my friends tell me it's 80% fixed, 20% Invisalign, removable clear aligner.
Yeah.
Is that what you see in your mix? Because you're in real world Ohio.
Yeah, and that number the percentage seems to be climbing as far as the number of people requesting it. I think probably one of the things that's really increased for us is the kind of what we call a mixed case or a hybrid case, where one arch can definitely be treated with a liner and the other, to expedite things, is treated with fixed appliances. Because
I never even thought of that.
Because what people want is speed. They'll come in and say, I want aligners. A lot of them will say they want Invisalign. Honestly, I was never an Invisalign customer. We always did our own in-house, starting, quite a ways ago, and then now using some other, clarity aligners. But the thing is, we always ask them, if I use aligners, this arch is, say, particularly the lower arch, and there's a lot of crowding, is going to take so much longer. And if you really want something that you can't see, but you also want speed, a really nice combination. We'll do the top with aligners. The bottom, we can use an aesthetic bracket. You can place it down low enough close to the gingiva that you're not going to see it, but your bottom will go so much faster. Because if someone's got a lot of crowding, by the time you expand the arch, make space with aligners, sometimes I'll do a diagnostic setup and show, okay, the top could be done in 20 aligners. The bottom, right now, we're at 85, and we still are not done. But if you let me put fixed brackets on there, I can get the bottom to go as fast as the top. So that's something, too, when you're thinking about people who are trying to say, do it themselves and smile direct, your arch, your upper front teeth may look great, but a lot of times it's, obviously the bite, the occlusion, or getting the alignment of the lower when there's a lot of crowding. That is so difficult with aligners, or if I have a case where I've got to put an attachment on every tooth, I'm like, why don't we just put some brackets on that lower arch and get it done? So that population has really grown for me, because there'd be some people that just, aligners were not going to do it, so they wouldn't do anything. But if I can give them a hybrid treatment like that, they're definitely in. And, and that works too for, our teen population as well.
So, when you said you never use Invisalign, the first thing that flashes and across my head is that you're that small country girl that avoids cost, and they were the high-end expensive, and
nothing to do with it.
It had nothing to do with cost?
No. The reason, I guess I'm glad that there was several reasons I never became an Invisalign customer. One is that I was always taught by a mentor that never do business with a company that you can't align with their core values. And I was never sure that they were actually in it for me. So what it forced me to do is to start to learn clear aligner therapy before a lot of people were. We were using a software that was based out of France for a while that was some of the first to be able to do some of your aligning setups. Then we started getting involved with Reshape, because I just couldn't give them money. But I knew I had to learn how to do aligners. So we started down the path.
Where does that come from? Was that a religion, or were you raised religious, or what?
No, I have someone that had led a successful company, and with some of the groups of mentors I was with, different women are like, here's the thing, only align yourself with businesses that you agree with their core values, because if you give them money, you're basically supporting them, what they're doing. So, so we're very cautious, who we do business
So
with. So,
what was Align Technologies? What were their actions and values that you couldn't align with?
well, we weren't, and I don't know that there's a lot of times we'll go back. When it first started, yes, okay, it's for orthodontists, and then it's going to go to dentists, and then they're going to get involved with, they've got their hand in a lot of the do it yourself. So I just didn't think, in some of the reports that people were sharing with their experience, I just wasn't comfortable with it. But here's the other reason too, from a market standpoint, is that in the area that I practice, the majority of dentists will all do, everyone does Invisalign, and they all just start competing with one another, trying to, I'll do it for this amount, I'll do it for that amount. A lot of them do it even just as a loss leader to get people into their practice because they want to do the perio, they want to do the restorative, they want to do the veneers. As an orthodontist, I don't do that. So it didn't make sense for me to compete against people that had giant billboards, because how do I differentiate? Like, my Invisalign's different than your Invisalign, and his is different from that. So when we started doing it in-house, one, it helped us differentiate ourselves. And
Yeah,
I
but
learned a
see,
lot.
you could do billboards. I was so ugly they told me I could only do radio.
Well, I wouldn't be on billboards.
They said, "Ah, we can't put that face on a billboard.
Yeah.
It'll cause car wrecks." Um,
Yeah.
so then, who is if you're not going to use the name brand
Uh-huh.
Nike
Uh-huh.
Invisalign, what clear aligners do you like? So you're just liking to buy the printers and the
So
software and
so
doing it
we
three
do
shape in house?
we do quite a bit of it in house. Some of the larger cases, because there gets to be a point too. If you're looking at, when you're manufacturing them yourself, there really is a point where it becomes more cost effective to outsource it. Looking at your staff timing and manufacturing. So when we do outsource, now we'll outsource to Clarity aligners. We used to. Do all the cases in-house. If you're looking at an in-house case where you do maybe 80, 100 aligners, that's a lot of, that's a lot of staff time. That's a lot of your time. So there really is a point where in-house is more efficient, more cost effective. And then when you start getting into bigger cases, to outsource them. But
what's Clarity aligners? Is that Clarity
mhm.
aligners?
Yeah, Clarity aligners. It's
Is
a
that
3M
Candica?
product.
Oh, that's
It's a three.
3M.
It's a 3M's product. Yeah,
Okay. Because
yeah.
the other one is um there's a what does it say right there? It says 3M 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 but it's mostly it's a 3M product. Okay,
Yeah.
so talk about 3M. Who's gotten their stocks beat up so bad? Maybe you'll give someone a reason to buy their stock. Um, so do you think 3M is going to be a competitor to Align Technology?
Well, one of the advantages that they have, and we just actually were doing a case today, where if you're doing a combination case, where you're going to do an aligner on the top, you've got fixed appliances on the bottom. So, you'll be able to do an indirect setup where you can then determine bracket positioning. And so we seated a bracket, indirect bonding tray that had 3M brackets, and then the aligner on the top, because, if you're using a line, you just have to be able to use your aligners and your different attachments. So, one of the advantages of the Clarity aligners, if you do want to do a combination case, or you can do the setup all at the same time and predict what that outcome is going to be. So I think that's one of the main advantages that they have.
So where do you think they are in market share? How far along are they coming?
Honestly, I don't know. It's a relatively newer product, and I know particularly when it was being released, it was being released kind of limited, and they weren't opening the floodgates, or as they were growing, getting more text training. So it's continuing to grow. So there are more people that are continuing to use that, particularly too if you're an orthodontist, you use a lot of brackets and wires. It's easier to kind of combine all of that together.
Yeah. Is that you find that true?
I think for myself it is.
Yeah, so in 3M technology and Invisalign
Uh-huh.
technology, is most of their technological gains, is it in the software from the iTero scanner, the scanning and
Mhm.
making it, or is it actually in like 3M's core competency, like the actual materials of the tray, the elasticity, the plasticity? Do you think it's software or physical?
A lot of it, I think, it's actually both. And that's one thing where everyone keeps working on what is the best material to make aligners. You need something that has, some rigidity, but also needs to have some elastic memory. If you compare it to like, the technology of arch wires, because there actually is some give in plastic and trying to figure out what is the elasticity of a material. Do you need different types of material throughout a case? Or maybe where you've got a lot of crowding in the beginning, you need something that's more flexible. When you get toward the end, you need something that's more rigid to do some of the fine movements. So, coming out with newer and better materials, I think, is really an important part. The software too, obviously, the predictability of it. You talk about artificial intelligence, knowing how much you have to move, and even stage things. For somebody like myself who was trained in fixed appliances, moving teeth with plastic is completely different, and it's a really different mindset. So even when you're looking at setups, I think one of the advantages for us, because we did so much of it in-house and still do, you have an understanding of setups where sometimes if people are always used to just hitting the Invisalign button and then getting back a ClinCheck and then figuring out the ClinCheck, it's hard if you don't have some of that experience. So a little bit is software, and the software keeps obviously evolving, and then materials too. And then, I think one of the biggest challenges I have with aligner therapy too is even patient compliance. How long will people continue to wear their aligners? Will they wear them as prescribed? And so I think there's a lot of things that need to continue to evolve.
Well, whenever you say 3M, I just I personally cringe, and do you know why that is?
No, why is that?
We were talking about values, where you can't agree with their values. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm real close to 3M because my oldest sister is a cloistered Carmelite nun in Lake Elmo, Minnesota.
Uh-huh.
So whenever I go to Minnesota, I got to kill 4 hours, 1 minute. So that leaves you 3M in Patterson. And so I thought I'm all good with 3M, and I podcast interview their president, James D. Ingrid, and so I'll just tell you the date. So he did his podcast with me on January 30, 2018, and he was fired March 2018. And if you think there's anything correlating between those two, you would be correct. And so I think it's going to be a lot harder to get CEOs to come on my show. In fact, the man that we've been talking about, Joseph M. Hogan, whenever I ask his people, when's he going to come on my show? I mean, they can't quit laughing. They just can't laugh. They go, yeah. We're supposed to go on Dentistry Uncensored with Howard. Yeah, okay, we'll get back with you. But yeah, he was on my show, and then he got to work a whole nother 2 months. And but anyway, yeah, it's tough. Some anyway, enough of that. But so you like Clarity aligners by 3M, and that's the is it you're using is that more material or software?
Probably. Boy, that probably a little bit of both. The software, I think, software and sort of quality of setup for me. And again, I'm comparing to some of the work put in when you're doing it yourself. Again, I couldn't compare it to Invisalign because I've never done Invisalign setups. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did do probably 3 or 4 cases when it first came out, but when you're comparing it to in-house, our main software now that we use for our in-house is 3Shape. And so, it takes some of the workload off of us when you can just submit it and then the setup comes back
well,
to you.
I got
And
my
so
theory about 3Shape. Have you visited 3Shape?
In Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
And what did you think?
I like their juice bar.
Their juice bar?
Yeah.
Well, my theory is in Copenhagen, Denmark, you have 3Shape, and in Copenhagen, and then you have what's the E4D in Helsinki, Finland is Plan Mecca. And the 4 months of the year, it's like you don't even see the sun. And all my dentist friends tell me that there's basically only 2 types of people in Scandinavia. in the winter for 10
Uh-huh.
months, you're just going to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then Sunday you're going to go home and do all your laundry and clean your house and all that
Mhm.
stuff, or you're just going to check out and be like an alcoholic until the summer. And they said that the blues, the no sun,
Mhm.
the bitter cold. I mean, I remember when I went to Creighton, so many times we had such
Uh-huh.
bad motives, like we were just going to play hooky all weekend. And then you
Mhm.
look out the window and it's like 20 below zero and freezing, snow and
Yeah.
slide, and you just like, what the hell? I'll just stay in and do homework. I think that their environment, you basically just promotes working. I mean, when I drive past ASU, I always think,
Uh-huh.
if I would have gone to ASU, I'd probably be a janitor right now at Taco Bell because you'd be so tempted to do so many things. Whereas in Omaha, Nebraska in the winter, Mother Nature took all those temptations away from you. And so, yeah, there's only one
Mhm.
mode in Scandinavia, and that's just work.
Well, when I was in Copenhagen, the one thing that struck me, and I was just there just briefly for a day, and I got to spend a day for 3 Shape people. But when we were out walking the street, it was cold. I mean, it was snowing, and there's people sitting out there. There's all these outdoor cafes. I'm like, it's freezing cold, and there's people like drinking their wine or drinking their beer. You would have swore it was summertime. I'm like, what's wrong with you people? It's freezing out here. So they obviously were adapting.
Yeah, and there's good research on that because when we got here in Arizona, when Canadians would come on down and spend the night with me at the weekend or whatever,
Uh,
they would want to go swimming. And we're like, dude, you don't understand. The water's this. And they go,
uh-huh.
you Phoenix. And then they go out there and they would swim. So then I thought, okay, it's all in my head. I'm just being a wimp. And I'd get in my swimsuit and I'd jump in and almost have a heart attack. Well, it turns out with that if you don't use it, you lose it. So when you put someone real northernly in a heat
Mhm.
tank, there's all their hairs are standing straight up and no heat's given off. And then you put someone from near the desert like me in there, and all
Mhm.
their hairs are laying down flat and heat's just pouring out. So they build up smooth muscle tonicity to actually hold heat in. And if they don't have that for years and years and years, it's all flaccid. It goes away.
It was making me think of when we would go diving in the Caribbean in Ohio. When you dive in quarries in Ohio, it is cold. You get on the Caribbean, people are putting on wetsuits and you're jumping in with a t-shirt. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is really warm, guys."
So I want to ask you a sensitive question, a politically
Sure.
deal. Some dentists don't want to do any Invisalign because they're in a study
Mhm.
club, and
Mhm.
they say, I don't want my orthodontist to ever figure out I did an Invisalign
Mhm.
case, and so that peer pressure, she just
Mhm.
feels uncomfortable around there. What do you
Uh-huh.
actually think? I mean, you have 4 kids, right?
Mhm.
And I have 4 kids, so
Uh-huh.
we probably um, are we both equally insane then after raising 4 kids? Uh,
You just quit paying attention after a while.
just quit. So my question is, what would you say to a young 25-year-old girl? She just got out of the Ohio State University,
Mhm.
and she wants to do an Invisalign class, but she wants to
Mhm.
do it behind your back because she goes to your
Mhm.
study club, and she's afraid you might find out. Then that's
Mhm.
what some people think. So what would you say to her if you found out she was thinking that?
Well, a good portion of my friends who are dentists all do Invisalign, and a lot of them even do fixed appliances. And I'm fine with it. And I think too, what's nice for them is they become more educated in what to look for. And so they'll pick cases like, okay, I can do this one, but they'll say, I definitely can't do this one. Or this isn't an aligner case. So some of my biggest referrers now are people who do their own aligners, and now that they've experienced it, they know this is not an aligner case, or maybe this is a more difficult aligner case. So even young doctors that are looking at doing it, I think you need to become educated in it. And if you want to do it, do it. But it'll also help you as you're working with orthodontists know when to refer. Some of the people that do their own orthodontics or do their own Invisaligners are really some of the best people who know when to send a kid to me, and are better at picking it up than someone who doesn't have any experience at all because they don't, they're not looking at the same types of things.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question that will make
Uh-huh.
make you lose friendship with half of your orthodontist colleagues,
Okay.
and you're
Okay.
gonna some. This is gonna make
Okay.
some love you more, I mean, it's kind of
Okay.
like if you say you're a Republican or a Democrat
Uh-huh.
or pro-choice.
Okay.
It's myofunctional principles. I mean,
Uh-huh.
if you're ever with two or more orthodontists, you split the
Mhm.
herd in half, and
Mhm.
it's passionate. Some just think, man, this is great stuff, and we
Mhm.
need to think holistic, and the other half are like, man, that is scam artist baloney, no research. How could you fall for
Mhm.
that? It's a very passionate, divided.
Mhm.
Do you agree with that?
I think it is very passionate. And I think sometimes what polarizes people, I think like any idea, is that people take it and if they apply it to this population, they think they can apply it to every population. Where I think there's so many modalities. If you're looking at myofunctional, that yes, I'm just thinking of a little girl who came to see me that I think is really going to benefit from that. Would everybody benefit from it? And I don't think so. But I think what polarizes people when someone thinks that one thing can do everything for everybody. And that's where people get split. So are there some cases that benefit from that? Yes. Are there some that I don't think no matter what you do, it's going to change some of those patterns or some of the skeletal patterns? So, I think the polarization comes because people become so passionate and they're not willing to listen to or look at what other people are doing
Well,
and see where does it fit?
let me ask this
Uh-huh.
this very succinctly. Does the tongue face muscle complex have a role in facial form and development, and can attempting to manage habits have an effect on treatment planning and outcomes?
I Now, in certain cases, yes. I think of some of my patients that have, an unusual tongue posture or tongue thrust. They have an anterior open bite, procline. Maybe they have, a maxillary transverse dimension. That's an issue. But does it apply to everybody? I don't think so. But there are certain people that, yes, if you can control that, if you can change that. And the thing is, will that modification make a big difference? And some people will make a significant difference and some people it won't. I mean, I think it's really hard to predict.
Okay, here's another
So
one. Dentistry
sure.
Uncensored. I'm only trying to use
Okay.
controversial stuff to get you
Yeah.
in trouble.
Okay.
So when I was little and got out of school,
Uh-huh.
the big radiology thing was the new
Mhm.
pantograph, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
the coolest feature on it was that it had a R on one side and an L on the
Uh-huh.
other, so you knew
Uh-huh.
how to
Yeah.
arrange it. Well,
Uh-huh.
now they've gone to this 3D CBCT.
Mhm.
And some orthodontists are saying this is standard of care, doing on every case. And then
Mhm.
we have 10 professions in specialties in dentistry, and you're one of them, orthodontics.
Mhm.
Another one is maxillofacial oral radiologist. And they say, no, that's too much radiology.
Mhm.
So how do you balance between, yeah, I'll take more information than just
Mhm.
the R and the L, but
Mhm.
is this going to be your standard intro? Stick every child in Ohio's head in this
Mhm.
machine and zap it with that much
Yeah.
radiation?
No. I don't think it is. I don't think it's necessary on every patient because and there are some, okay, like cases that are orthognathic cases. Yes, we definitely do that. Even if there's an impaction, or I, recently had a patient that it looked like there was some external root resorption from some adjacent teeth, and got a limited cone beam to really see what was going on. But there's so many cases that you look at that you wouldn't need that. You don't need that information if it's going to significantly affect the treatment plan or treatment outcome. Yes, but there are people who do it on I wouldn't do it to my own kids. I mean, and often if I always tell because
That's a
yeah,
generalist racist thing. I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure you do it on one of the four kids.
yeah.
You wouldn't do it on.
Wouldn't do it
Come
all
on,
of them.
if you're gonna
Yeah,
be one of those moms that tells me you don't
yeah,
have a favorite child, I mean, come on, this is dentistry
yeah.
uncensored. Which child's your favorite?
Who's ever not given me a bad time at the time? But yeah, it was really interesting because before everyone was pushing the cone beam, and so much of it was pushed even by manufacturers of cone beams. And one of my favorite ads I saved was from a company, and they were showing, and it was someone's testimonial, like, well, if I wouldn't had a cone beam, I never would have found these impacted cuspids. And you looked at the pan, there were two cuspids heading this way. You looked at the picture, an occlusal picture, you could look like two marbles in the palette. And I'm thinking, well, what else were they? I mean, yes, you would have found them. I mean, they were right there. So
Are you sure it wasn't a hernia?
So, as far as standard of care, I don't think so. Is there a place for them? Yes. But again, how can we always have to pick all or nothing? People are like, oh, I never take a cone beam. People are like, I take them on everybody. How about we just do it when it's really necessary for treatment outcomes?
And brand names, you're big orthodontist. What practice manager software and what CBCT are you using?
I don't have a CBT, and I refer. I have an oral surgeon that has one, so I don't use a cone beam. Let's see, what was the rest of the question?
Practice manager software for an orthodontic
Dolphin,
office.
Dolphin,
Dolphin.
Dolphin imaging, and Dolphin management.
Wow. And are you a happy customer with them?
I have been, and I'm a long-term customer. We started with Dolphin imaging, I think 25 years ago, when it was just the imaging, and then went into their management soon as it was available. Actually, I think we were a beta test for the management component. So my son, who I was pregnant with my son, and he's going to be 17. So we've had that for about 17 years. So,
Wow. Very, very cool. But see, kids, look at what she just said. She's not going to tell you, but I know she's rich. She's been an orthodontist for 25 years. She's crushing it. But isn't it funny how rich people drive old cars and she doesn't have a CBCT and her oral surgeon uses one, he just uses that one. And then you come out of school, $400,000 in debt,
uh-huh.
2 schools here, and I'll know their dad. And I'll say,
Hmm.
you know what, you're $400,000 in debt. You know what, you need to go move in with your dad. You won't have any
Hmm.
rent. Eat ramen noodles in the basement and pay down this debt. And they're like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to. And they can, the way a taxidermist knows you're a Homo sapien is because you can rationalize anything. Well,
Uh-huh.
they come up with nine, and the next thing you know, they're buying a house out in Queen Creek for $400,000.
Hmm.
And because what happened? Well, you got used to just going $100,000 of debt. Like
Yeah.
me, if I bought $100,000 car, I'd have to give you $100,000 cash. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a dime signing up for
Hmm.
$1,000 a month payment for 1,000 months, who cares? And it's like they have no taste of cash. They get used to pile on
Hmm.
debt. And they'll buy a CBCT, and they've done like 3 ortho cases, and they'll say, "Well, I need it because I'm going to get into Invisalign." And it's like, okay, well, how many ortho cases have you done? 10,000?
Well, what's funny is that we were setting up our office, and I work with residents, and I was listening to a consultant trying to convince these residents that they all had to buy a cone beam to differentiate themselves in the market, and it would show them, their patients with technology. Well, I happened to be in my office, and I was standing, and I could hear the dad and the son talking in the new patient room, and the dad goes, "Man, the technology here is just amazing. This is just great." Do you know what they were talking about? I had a trash can that was a touchless trash can, and that when you walked by and went to throw something in, it would open up. He threw his paper away and hit close. He goes, "Now, son, that is some amazing technology." And I'm thinking, okay, 2 days ago, I was listening to someone try to convince people they needed to buy this very expensive piece of equipment. Here, they could have went to touchlesstrashcans.com and and it been impressive too. So, it's hard when they're kind of pushed to try to buy things. But and by the way, when you're talking about cars, I hate new cars. Do you know why?
Why?
Because I'm an awful driver. My car sitting in the parking lot now, all 4 quarter panels, the front, back, everything's bent, dent, and I like it that way. I never fix it because I'm going to hit something again anyhow. I mean, luckily I've never hit people, so I haven't really hurt anybody. I usually hit objects like poles, garages, things like that. So I will never
Well, I'll
have
tell
a
you what, I
$1,000.
my car I bought in 2004, and it's 2020, and it's got
Uh-huh.
170,000 miles. Same thing. I got 6 grandkids, and it was
Mhm.
about a year ago. One of my grandchildren, and just as I was coming out of the garage, I decided to open
Uh-huh.
the door and caught it, bent it back,
Oh.
and she started crying. I pulled it forward, and I
Uh-huh.
asked her, "Why are you crying? No one's hurt." And then I
Yeah.
just body slammed the door back, and then when my older boys saw it, they punched it and needed it a couple more times. Anyway, it opens and
Mhm.
closes nice now. But it's got
Yeah.
this huge old dent on the side, and every time I look at that, I think of my little precious
It
Taylor.
does. It tells a story.
Yeah,
It
and
tells a
and
story.
whenever they write on the wall, I go to the Kohl's Hobby Lobby,
Uh-huh.
where they buy that
Yeah.
frame deal, and I just buy the
Uh-huh.
frame, and then wherever they drew on the wall, I just nail it around it, so it kind of looks like
That's a
it's
good idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like and that was and then with alginate, I would go home and I would mix up the alginate in the pan, and I put their face
Mhm.
in it with a straw,
Oh.
and then I
Mhm.
pour that in stone and put that on the wall. So I got like their little plaster 3-year-old faces on the wall. And then if you ever get mad at them, you just go kick their plaster head and just smother. No, I'm just, I'm just gonna ask more and more
Sure.
ortho questions.
Uh-huh.
Um, Sometimes when people get into the biggest trouble, would you say when a non-orthodontist starts doing an Invisalign case? And so what I want you to answer is,
Mhm.
what are the low-hanging fruit of? Please do not do that. I mean, are you thinking an open bite, a long face?
Mhm.
If you know nothing, it's okay to have known knowns. Known knowns is
Mhm.
good. Known unknowns is good. But
Mhm.
unknown unknowns is
Yeah.
not fun. So she's young. She wants to do an
Mhm.
Invisalign case. She really doesn't know that much ortho. What's the
Mhm.
low-hanging fruit to run on this case?
I would say probably, you've got class one with obviously not an open bite, but not a super deep bite, but kind of an ideal occlusion that maybe has some spacing or some crowding. And I think
That's
when
the
you have
ideal one.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some of the easiest ones to start with. And particularly, I think too, when you look at cases, ones that the arches have a similarity. I think what becomes trickier if one arch has a lot of spacing, another arch has a lot of crowding. If both arches have spacing, a lot of times the mechanics is very simple, or both arches have about the same amount of crowding. So when you start getting mismatches, which is really hard. That if someone has an ideal occlusion and maybe is really crowded on the lower or spacing on the upper, that can get you in trouble because you're closing space and decreasing arch length in one arch, but then you have to increase the arch length on the other. So pick class one cases that have a similarity in the alignment in both the upper and lower. Same thing is true. And if you're even looking at like the dimensions, transverse dimensions, if there's a similarity in the transverse dimension, those are easier cases. Ones that when there's a difference between, say, the maxillary and the mandibular arch, those get harder to coordinate the arches. So I would look for, class ones that have very similar arch and needs for both arches.
Okay. And then the inverse of that question, what would be the ones that they should run from?
Ones that are harder than, and they appear like they would be easy if there's a lot of spacing, because a lot of times what happens is you have to really look at what type of attachment you're using as you're trying to close space, or you end up with a lot of tipping. Cases too, I think, going back to ones for, if restorative dentists are looking at doing some Invisalign, ones that they're going to be doing some of the restoration. A lot of times I'll think of, sometimes we'll be doing some touch-ups on cases that are going to be having some implants in the anterior, maybe missing laterals, or missing teeth, because as the general dentist, you're going to be able to treatment plan exactly what size you're going to want that ponic or that implant space to be. So those might be nice ones to start with too, that you're going to be doing the restorative. But I think ones that are hard to stay away from, and you have to be careful. I've had some friends of mine that when they first started doing Invisalign, they would send me this ClinCheck, and it would be there would definitely be a big skeletal discrepancy, but they would move the teeth to try to in the ClinCheck, you could move the teeth and they would align, but there was such an underlying skeletal discrepancy. So I'd be cautious of ones that when you look at, if you look at a cephalometric film and there's a big discrepancy between the maxilla and the mandible, and it's more of a skeletal problem than a dental problem, I would be very careful of those as well, because it's very tempting on a computer. You can take that cuspid and distalize, and you can move things that aren't realistic movements, but if you're not used to moving teeth, you don't realize that that's unrealistic. So I'd stay away from skeletal discrepancies.
And I've one follow-up question to the Dolphin practice
Uh-huh.
management.
Uh-huh.
The obvious question on that is in 2008, Patterson bought
Mhm.
Dolphin Image. Do you think I mean, Shine's bought like 60 companies since I graduated
Uh-huh.
from dental school. Do you think when Patterson bought Dolphin, that was a good thing for Dolphin customers, or was that a bad thing?
It changed some of the things because we had already been a customer for a while, so we already knew quite of the people that were there. Obviously, when Patterson bought them, they have more resources. So, I mean, we've seen it. The softwares continue to evolve, and the one thing we always have somebody come in from Dolphin as a consultant, and teach us what's new. Because the thing with Dolphin and so many of these softwares, there's so much in there. You don't that you don't even know how to do or how to set up different templates. So, as the program continue to expand, we use somebody that comes in every year to kind of help clean up our database, make sure that we're using it like we should be. So I think that's where people sometimes get really frustrated, because some of these programs can be so complex. But as far as that, for us, as far as support or
So
it was,
do
it's
you?
fine for us.
So Patterson owns EagleSoft. So
Hmm.
Patterson's in Minneapolis, St. Paul. You got
Uh-huh.
Effingham, Illinois down here. You're over to the right.
Hmm.
Did a lot of that Dolphin imaging programming go to Effingham, Illinois with the EagleSoft? Do you see orthodontists who use EagleSoft better synced with
Boy,
Dolphin
honestly,
imaging?
I don't know. I really don't know anything about how EagleSoft, integrates with the Dolphin imaging or the Dolphin management. So, boy, be hard to comment on that.
Well, you could always just make something up.
I could sometimes I can do that too. Yeah, it's
Uh,
great. Yeah,
back to class two.
yeah.
You're obviously a huge authority on it. Where does that come from? Why were you interested in severe class twos? Is that something more common in Ohio?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, where does this interest come from?
Yeah, and part of it just came from my own patient population, and we see a lot of patients, and a lot of them are class two because a lot of people who are here are generational. They live here, they're related to each other. So I see a lot of class twos compared to even different parts of it. And a lot of my patients, their class two is their mandibular retrognathic. So a lot of it's very simple, similar, and a lot of it's very significant. So I was trained in removable appliances, and when you get out in private practice, it's hard to, patient compliance, motivation, treatment time. So then I moved into learning fixed appliances like a Herbst type appliance. And then when forces came out, it just seemed like it was something simpler that I could accomplish a lot with. And part of it, we just were using so many of them. That's how I was asked to kind of, what are you doing with them? And since we had a large patient database, we were able to supply samples for researchers, for residents, for different universities. So that's how we kind of got into it, just pure need. So we had so many class two kids, and now they're bringing my class two patients are starting to bring me their class two kids. So it's
So you do think it's genetic then?
oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
huh?
It's kind of funny because some of these and I'm talking we've got families in this area. Some of them have 8, 10, 12 kids. And it's amazing what you can see running families. So like I had one family, there was 4 sets of palatal impacted cuspids. I mean, that's a really high ratio in one set of kids. Um, people tell me, okay, at the family reunion, all the kids are wearing some type of, like forces or spring-like appliance because there's so much of a class two. So yeah, a lot of it is because of the genetic component of what I see here made me have to learn how to do this to help these guys out. So.
Um, again, we're Dentistry Uncensored. I don't want to ask
Okay.
anything that anyone agrees on. I don't want to put anybody to sleep. I want to
Okay.
keep asking
Okay.
questions until you just
Sure.
like get mad and walk off the stage.
Okay. Oh, I don't
I
get mad though. You're gonna have a hard time because I really don't get mad.
I had a orthodontist on one time,
Uh-huh.
and he was most controversial. His name was Ben Burris.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
he thought, and this happens in my hell, this
Uh,
is happening right now to how many of my daughter-in-law? One, no, two of my daughter-in-laws where they're in ortho. So
uh-huh.
when they go to the orthodontist. He takes off the
Mhm.
wires. They come to me. I clean their teeth. They go
Mhm.
back. Ben Burris thought this is ridiculous, and
Mhm.
we're gonna get an orthodontist. And my God, so I mean a hygienist. So
Uh-huh.
he hired 2 hygienists, and you would have thought he started dealing crack outside of his his
Yeah.
office, and
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was crazy.
Uh-huh.
He might have been safer to have a, whatever, but
Yeah.
so why was that so over the top?
Hmm.
Or was it just because he had a tradition of being over that he was the orthodontic pundit to begin with? They were looking for an excuse, or is that really a violation of your Hippocratic oath if you were to hire a hygienist?
Well, until recently, and unfortunately, our hygienist had to move. We had a hygienist in our office.
You did
Uh-huh.
doing cleanings.
On a limited basis, yes. But here's the difference. We still would send them to their dentist. So basically our cleanings when we needed to for certain, I think it's all about patient care. And you've got some people that, you know, realistically, are they going to go every 3-4 months to their dentist? Well, can we get them to go twice a year? We even give them certificates that they can redeem for points and money if they go see their dentist, and sometimes it's hard. So we ran our own hygiene program here too for kids or even adults who really were struggling with hygiene. Some of the kids that come in to see me, I can't even treat them because their hygiene's so bad. They already have decalcification, so we would dump them into our own hygiene program. But the thing is, we never tried to take away any of the, I say any of the business or work for the dentist, because we'd still send them to their dentist. We wouldn't, bill for any of the services. It was just something for me. It was more about patient care. And if I can't get your hygiene under control, we're going to have to discontinue treatment. If I can't get your hygiene under control, I can't even start treatment for you. Unfortunately, we see a good percentage of patients who come into our area already have some white spot lesions, some, decalcification. So, yeah, I'm not sure at the time that he did that. It became so controversial. Part of it, I don't know. He may have had some, kind of could fuel the fire anyhow. And so there were people that were looking for things, and in different states have different laws. Ohio has changed some in the past couple of years that before I couldn't do anything once I declared my specialty unless I was to give up my specialty. Now a lot of it has changed, that there is some leeway there. So I don't know if it's that controversial anymore. I think part of it is just people were afraid that, well, shoot, if he's going to see all the hygiene, they're not going to come back. But I still want people to go, because there's people who are going to be, your dentist and your hygienist are going to be looking more for decay. As much as we are dentists, once you get so focused on lining things up, it's you become so narrow focused. It's like, oh shoot, there was a hole in that one, but so yeah, I don't know if it'd be that controversial now. I really don't.
It's fun listening to the way you're thinking about this, because we're in Arizona. We're just trying to get them not to drink Mountain Dew after they smoke meth. I mean, that's just our that's our ceiling goal. I thought I saw something die and go away in orthodontics, and by God, if it didn't come back to life, lingual orthodontics. I remember in '87. I saw a couple of cases of that, and I called it the Curious George syndrome, because once your tongue started playing with the inside of it, it went to hamburger, and she would just say, I can't quit doing this,
Yeah.
and they were gone. By God, if I didn't see a new case of it a couple months ago. Is it here, there? Is it gone, going?
It's not gone, and there are some groups that do. I see it more like when I'm in Europe. There's more lingual orthodontists, I think, than in the U.S. And there are some people who have pretty decent sized lingual practices. There's some new systems out there that the wires are pre-bent and uses a lot of computer aided technology to not only design the bracket but design the wire to make it more efficient. But to me, I did some lingual that was probably maybe 8-10 years ago. We started doing some custom lingual where the wires were bent, but a lot of patients, you're right. To me, I don't think I could tolerate it. And from an orthodontic standpoint, it's the mechanics are so different than when you're using a labial appliance, that I think as plastics get better and better, that's why there's always going to be probably some lingual, but I don't think it's going to, for a while people are like, oh, this is going to be. I don't think so. Just for what you mentioned, to tolerate it, we found some of the patients that we did that, there were some that tolerated it well. Some of them, it's like, no, this is not gonna work. And so, yeah, there are some new companies that are kind of reinventing it and making it, easier and simpler for people who want to do it.
Another question I want to ask is is the bracket that big a deal? I mean, like you go on to these websites and some they'll only do tip edge. I mean, it's only tip edge, and then some are like Damon, and some are this, and sometimes I'm wondering, it's like I'm sure Tiger Woods could beat me in golf regardless of what club he was using. Is it kind of like if you're Tiger Woods, just hand me the clubs and I'll make it work? Or is there a reason to be brand loyal to, say, Tip Edge versus Damon versus Ormco or, Henry Schein? How brand loyal versus agnostic are you?
I'm brand loyal, and here's what I tell people to do. To 3M bracket. And I use their self-ligated bracket, both the aesthetic, which is the Ultra, a smart clip bracket, and also some of their Clarity Advance, which is a clear bracket. But what I tell people, and where I see people struggle, is if you start and mix and match. Like, people will buy. And here's the thing: if you buy a really inexpensive bracket and the slot is not always the same, you can't figure out what wire to put in there. So, or you'll have friends who are like, well, I buy expensive brackets, but like wires that are cheap, and it's just, it's not the same diameter or circumference. So you have to pick a system. There's usually a bracket that's designed to go with a wire, and you're supposed to put it in a certain place. So when people start mixing and matching their systems, that's where they kind of get into trouble. So I think there's some advantage to pick a bracket, pick the wire, and pick where you're going to put it and do it repetitively. And that way you can see. But if you don't pick something that has a quality to it, it's hard to know exactly what size that bracket slot's going to be. So, and the thing is too, sometimes people will start arguing about. Good.
You like 3M. Did you ever get to meet Dr. Sumitra Mitra? She was there. She was there. I mean, they put her in the Hall of Fame. I mean, she's inventor of Filtech, nanocomposite dental materials at 3M, inducted to the National Inventors Hall of Fame. I mean, I love that woman so much. She couldn't have been 2 foot, probably 4 foot tall, 5 foot tall. Just the smartest person I think I might have ever met. I mean, a PhD organ. But anyway, when you said mixing and matching, oh my gosh, you'd blow a gasket, because these dentists, they use the bonding agent from one, the resin from another, and acid etch from another, and she's like, did these guys learn anything in biochemistry? And then she would take these quotes from the biggest names in dentistry. She would actually, this is back when they'd film it and have it on a VCR tape and roll in a TV with the VCR 8-track thing. And these dentists are just like, well, I don't really like the acetone. I prefer the alcohol or the vinegar base. And you could walk these guys to a chalkboard with Sumitra, and I was there, where they couldn't even have passed high school organic chemistry because they learned it 10 or 20 years ago. So rule number 1 I learned from her is you don't mix and match chemistry sets, and you get a damn timer. When she says stir for 15 seconds, she didn't pull that number out of a hat. And there was a standard deviation at 1 was maybe 13 seconds and 17 seconds. And doctor is thinking about what he's going to do after work, and he started for 3 seconds. And my God, get a timer and stay within the chemistry set. And here's why I like Europeans. Well, everything's a trade-off. It's not good or bad. It's just different. Like when you go to dental conventions in Europe, like Cologne, the largest dental meeting in the world, the owners of the company are the ones lecturing about their product. And the Europeans don't want to, they disintermediate the middleman. They don't want to hear some middleman guy come in here talking about this. Just like in Americans, we get rid of the middleman. You manufacture, it goes right to my house. I don't want to pay a distributor. Remember when we got out of school, half these dental companies, well, I'm the Arizona rep. Well, you know what that means? You mark up everything 25%. Can I just buy it from headquarters for 25% cheaper? No, I have the rights for the whole state of Arizona. They're doing that with cars now. Tesla can't sell you a car direct because they don't have a distributorship in Arizona,
Yeah.
so it's all baloney. But I love the fact that the Europeans are so non-judgmental and so intellectual that if they want to hear about XYZ's company, they want, well, hell, it's your company. It's named
Yeah.
after you. You do this 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the most famous middlemen on all these different deals, when you go to their scientist and you show him, well, they wrote this for my magazine. What do you think about this? Half the time they'd want to just cry. They didn't know if they wanted to cry or throw up. But every time I did this, that I put the owner of the company on the cover and wrote him a piece, they'd say, "Oh, well, this a throwaway rag. I mean, he had the CEO of this company that sells stuff." Well, what are you, a volunteer? I mean, what are you, working at a public health? This guy has 1,000 employees, and you have 5. Oh, wow, what an original idea. And your dad was a dentist, and he had 5 too. Oh, yeah. How could we listen to a guy that has 1,000 employees and whose dad he never met in his life? I mean, so I don't know where all this judgmental weirdness comes from, but I love Symmetra, and that whole rant came because it so reminded me of her deal. Which, she said, if you're gonna mix bonding agents, why don't you just use Elmer's glue? It'd be a hell of a lot cheaper, and it's gonna work the same. So after that rant, I hope that they didn't lose deal. So you're brand loyal to 3M's which bracket?
Well, it depends. For our aesthetic bracket, we've been using their Ultra, and I'll be honest with you too. We did some of the beta testing on it, and how I ended up so 3M brand loyal. Again, starting 26 years ago, people don't understand pre-internet. You had a catalog, and we had a rep, and I had a Unitech at that time. 3M was Unitech, and I had a rep that really understood orthodontics and could really kind of help me navigate through. And so we just started using it. And again, I'm rural enough that a lot of people never showed up at my door to say, hey, maybe buy this stuff. So we just got a lot of experience using their products. And that was probably about 10 years ago. Then they asked if I would start, helping and doing some education for them. So bracket wise, their aesthetic bracket, I like the self-ligated bracket, which is an ultra bracket. And then for their metal self-ligated bracket, we've been using the Smart Clip bracket, which, gosh, it's probably been out about 10 years now, I guess, maybe even a little bit longer. So I've got a lot of longevity. And again, it's the system. We tend to, the thing about their brackets too is they're pre-coated. And now they even have a flash free, because here's the problem you find when you're bonding orthodontic brackets. People get real precise about their prescription and where they're going to place it. But if you have an uneven amount of adhesive underneath it, that really changes the values in the bracket itself. So 3M right now is the only company that has a flash free bracket. So that way, when you place that bracket to the tooth surface, there's no extra adhesive. So you know that you're going to express the torque that's in that bracket base. So that's part of the reason I don't know that we could ever use anything that, not only that I'd have to put adhesive on, but something that's not flash free, because it's just such a game changer. It makes bonding so quick and much more accurate. So that's probably where that.
You and I have lived through a lot of fads.
Uh-huh.
Lots of things come and went, from microabrasion to whatever. Some people are thinking that that this sleep medicine stuff is it's either being applied to way too many people or not being applied. How is sleep medicine affected your orthodontic practice? I mean, are you now 5% sleep, 10% sleep? A lot of people call everything's a crisis now. We're supposed to be having an opioid crisis. When the British got to Hong Kong 200 years ago, they said 1/3 of the people were stoned on opium. I don't know what Ohio looks like, but I don't see 1/3 of Arizonans smoking opium. They always say we're in a healthcare crisis. The herd is dropping 300,000 newborn babies a day. If you ever meet a rancher and he says, my hogs are dropping 300,000 babies a day, I don't think anybody would say it's a healthcare crisis. But is sleep apnea, is it real? Is it overdone? Is it dramatic? Has it impacted you a lot? Where are you at with that?
Well, and I think it's kind of like we talked about before, is that sometimes someone takes one principle and tries to apply it to everybody. And often people come in for a consultation that they're, thinking that their sleep apnea is due to their, their dental relationship. And there are some, if you're retinopathic, if you've a maxillary transverse deficiency, but if you really have an ideal, skeletal relationship of your face, but you weigh 450 pounds, I mean,
Hey, let's
it's
not
like,
get personal. I didn't. That was on my private HIPAA chart.
but, oh, but, and I'm thinking sometimes they're focusing on the wrong part of the story, because sometimes what you need to do it's not a quick fix. It's not like, oh, if I've had people that sometimes even their dentists say, oh, if you fix your teeth, your sleep apnea, go, that's not true. That's not your problem. Do we see some patients, particularly in kids that are really, maxillary transverse, mandibular deficient, to help increase airways, that can help them? Yeah. But I mean, obviously you're going to have to coordinate that with a true, someone who specializes in sleep medicine and do the appropriate studies, or so yeah, it hasn't impacted my practice. I think what's kind of funny is when you hear so much a push at like airway friendly orthodontics. I just kind of laugh, because I'm thinking, what, we never really tried to smother people. It's like, yeah, like, as opposed to smothering people, I don't get it. So, and so much of orthodontics in the past, in the my past 15, 20 years has been more of expansion, um, trying to increase mandibular projection, as far as, trying to make things more retrusive. I think that's probably more people who were treated that are now maybe in their 50s or 60s. So that kind of, when everyone starts talking about, do you do airway friendly orthodontics? I just want to kind of laugh, because I'm like, well, no, I'm going to try to smother your kid instead.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried that, but it was much more fun just to smother the kid.
Yeah.
And think of all the money you saved on food by not having to ever feed that guy again. So
one more thing, how it has sleep has impacted my practice too, is sometimes what people don't realize, if they're wearing a sleep appliance long term, and they had maybe a class 3 tendency to start with, and there was a woman who came to see me who really was held so far forward, and she was a very large woman, and it held her so far forward. She got to a point after, and she had been wearing this appliance for about 5 years, and I know there's some exercises to try to reseat things, but she had a really significant malocclusion, and she's like, I hate this now. She described, I have an underbite that's 1.5 inches, and the problem is she was so used to being held forward. The only really option would be probably an orthodontic procedure to move the maxilla forward, but that would have looked awful. So I think sometimes what I'm seeing is people come in that are wearing, sleep appliances long term, and don't realize there can be some changes in their bite, or in their occlusion, and then all of a sudden they're not happy about that. So, that I've seen some becoming a little bit more prevalent too, as more and more people are practicing, sleep dentistry.
So, from Smiles Direct Club, Invisalign, to more and more orthodontic residents, what would you say to someone who's in dental school at the Ohio State University and said they wanted to go on to be an orthodontist? I mean, compared to when you became an orthodontist 25 years ago?
Well, I even think back to when I was in dental school, they actually were telling us in dental school there really wouldn't be a need for dentists, because all the decay was going to be gone. There wouldn't be anything to do. You'd have to all do aesthetics. And the interesting thing too, like when you're talking about the Mountain Dew and all the habits, in our area here, there's more decaying kids than there probably has been from the generation before. As far as orthodontics, would I still encourage people to, if that's something they want to do? Yes. But I think it's going to continue to evolve. Have all these things influenced our practice? As being an orthodontist, I still think the greatest job in the world. Yes, I do. Will continue to be that way. I think so. Not for everybody though, because there's just certain things people don't want to change. One of the things that with all the aligners and even the Smile Direct and all that has made orthodontists realize is that we have to be maybe more accommodating to patients and what patients want, and come up with different treatment modalities and continue to evolve so that we can serve patients. Because, 15, 20 years ago, if you went to an orthodontist, this is what you got, this is how long was going to take, and that might have been your only option. So, yeah, I would still, my own son's thinking that this is something he'd want to, is it going to look like what I'm doing today? Probably not. I mean, is it going to change? I think it will continue to change, but I think the change has been good so far. Or am I just an optimist and am I not?
Well, no, I
I
think
don't
when
know.
people like
Yeah.
you and me say that dentistry is the
Yeah.
greatest profession in the world,
Uh-huh.
that's because when we go home, we had 4 kids, and
Yeah.
I think that the young kids should realize, well, remember they had 4 kids. Let's not do that mistake. Let's have 4 dogs. Then maybe we'll want to go home. Nah, but no, 4 kids. That was a commitment. That was the hardest job I ever loved. I mean, did you ever have a what was harder, becoming a successful orthodontist or 4 kids?
Hmm. I don't know. I thought the kids were pretty easy, but again, maybe I wasn't paying attention.
Well, it depends on the population. I mean, if you weren't raising Irish, it might have been totally different. I don't know what you were raising. One last thing I want
Uh-huh.
to tell the kids a lot because
Uh-huh.
when you've been doing this 32 years, you've stuck your tongue in a lot of light sockets, and a lot of your friends have done it. And
Mm-hmm.
I always tell you, and it sounds so obvious, and everyone knows it, but they don't think about it. I mean, I want you to get an A on the diagnosis and treatment
Mm-hmm.
plan. I don't care if you get a C on the work. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot better than getting an A plus dental case and you got a C on the treatment plan, the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
see a lot of these people. They run to these 6-month ortho courses, these weekend
Mm-hmm.
ortho courses, and I'm like, okay, well, Richard Litt is a board certified orthodontist, and
Mm-hmm.
he taught the program at University of California, San Francisco. He taught it at Detroit. So this is the guy that taught the orthodontist, and a lot of people say, it's too long. It's hard,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the course is the cost of one ortho case, and then another one is Harry Green out here in Arizona. I mean, I just think if you're gonna learn ortho, and remember, if you cut Alaska in half, each half is bigger than Texas. So in Texas, they're telling you how they're all that in a bag of
Mm-hmm.
chips. They're not even a half of an Alaska. And
Mm-hmm.
orthodontists, if I cut the 10,800 orthodontists that we mail Ortho Town magazine to
Mm-hmm.
every month, and I cut that in half, each half is bigger than the number 2, which is oral surgeons, and the number 3,
Mm-hmm.
which is periodontists. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
orthodontists, they're the Jupiter of the specialists. Jupiter's like, what is it, like 94% of the mass of all the planets in the solar
Mm-hmm.
system or whatever. And if you're going to learn ortho, you need to learn from a board certified orthodontist. And I would really recommend that when you start that that you go meet the orthodontist up the street and say, hey, I took this course from a real
Mm-hmm.
orthodontist, board certified, whatever, and here's the case I'm going to do. And
Mm-hmm.
in fact, when I going back in the '87, when I started my first course, I told Harry Green, I said, okay, I'm going to start this case, but the first one's going to be a freebie. It's going to be my Aunt Sue, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to come watch me present the treatment and go over her questions. Can we agree on
Mm-hmm.
that? And I'll pay for that or whatever. He said,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. And to this day, my Aunt Sue thinks he's like the sexiest man alive. He's like the Brad Pitt of whatever. But it was just great. So I was taught by board certified. I had a relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
then one last thing I'll notice about the doing ortho. Number one, just get a good course if you're going to try
Mm-hmm.
it. But it seems like all my friends that learned ortho, they played with it for maybe 5 years, but then they
Mm-hmm.
lost interest and went away from
Mm-hmm.
it. And I'd say half my friends that learned implants
Mm-hmm.
did the Dominican Republic, got the machine, they
Uh-huh.
did the whole 9 yards. And after about 100 implants, said, nah, I just don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think that's a good thing because then you have the more diagnostic in your
Mm-hmm.
head. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
doing ortho, you're not placing implants, but my God, you
But you
can
know.
diagnose and treatment
Mm-hmm.
plan it a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. I think that's really true. I mean, when you have that kind of knowledge base, and you're right. A lot of times people will start, and I think some of my friends that used to do a lot of ortho have, had gotten trained in it, but they found, what, I like it, but I really get a kick out of some of, my crown and bridge or my implants or my complex restorative cases that they kind of, fade away, and the thing I think what's hard too when if you're starting orthodontist and as a general dentist is, as a general dentist, a lot of your procedures are more compact. Like, you're maybe prepping something where they're like, man, I didn't know it was going to take this long to get to the end. I'm used to more instantaneous gratification where, some of these cases can go a long period of time. And if you're trying to do maybe some early expansion and then you're going in to fix the punch, you might not see your work completed for a long period of time. And then you're watching people in retention, and, something like this goes on forever. So it's almost it's a different mindset that if you're not used to it, if you're used to things going quick and seeing the, cases be done in 6 months or even, quicker, some of your restorative cases, that's, I think, the hardest part is to pace yourself. And I think too, trying to, if you're flipping back and forth, what you're doing during a day, a lot of times people will block and just do their ortho at a certain time, because I think it'd be really hard to go from one mindset to the other, one patient right after the other.
What would you say the average overhead is for an orthodontist in America? Average
Boy.
overhead.
You're probably looking around 65.
Okay, 65. It's 2/3.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
2/3. And then this orthodontist is charging, say, $6,500 for a case. What do you say the average class 1 molar adult ortho is?
I would say you're probably right on.
Yeah, and how long would you say that average appointment time is when they come in once a month for the appointment?
Depends. I mean, if you're looking at an adult versus a kid, if you're looking at adult, adult,
average
my
adult
gosh,
chair time.
adult, it could be forever. You're probably looking at least half hour.
Okay.
Kids, maybe 20 minutes. Adults, half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, but kids 20, adults half hour?
Yeah.
And what percent of your practice is kids versus adults?
We're about 15 to 18% adults.
Right, so it's 80-20 kids. And those appointments are 15 minutes. Right?
Depends what we're doing.
But on average, just the median.
Yeah, so if you're looking at 15, 20 minutes for art changes.
So here's my point. So 6,500, 80% kids, 15-minute appointments. Then Bozo, my buddy, learned ortho, and that appointment in there is an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, the orthodontist has got 2/3 overhead, dude, and she's doing it in 15 to 30 minutes. So you're doing it for an hour. It's the same thing with a wisdom tooth. You took an hour and a half to pull that impacted wisdom tooth. Your oral surgeon would have pulled 2 people's 4 wisdom teeth in 1 hour. And so if this is what they charge and this is what they overhead, since they don't know their math, they don't know their math because their software isn't hooked up to their accounting. So, I can walk into any dentist in America with my, when people say Americans don't know metric, that's because they don't shoot a 9mm and buy drugs. But if you walk into a dental office with a 9mm and the dentist walks out of the hygiene check and you put it to his head and say, hey, you're a hygienist of 10 years, just did the same old cleaning exam, 2 bite wing x-rays. Did you make $5.12 after taxes, or did you lose $12? He has no idea.
Yeah.
He has no idea. And I say, okay, well, let me explain it this way. Your orthodontist is charging $6,500. She's 80% kids. And the average time the kids, they'll do 3 kids an hour, sometimes 4. Yeah. And you're doing 1 kid an hour. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, and I think that's why sometimes people will get out of it. And, part of the whole key is just repetition. I mean, I can do it faster because that's all I do all day long. And, it's years of repetition, doing the same thing. So, as you get quicker, that's where, that difference is. And it's, it's harder if you're not doing it all the time, or your staff too. I mean, that's a big difference too. If you've got staff that, are also, doing part of or helping with restorative procedures, and then all of a sudden they have to switch to ortho, that makes a big difference too. And even what they can accomplish for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was just an honor to have you come on the show. I was looking so forward to it. Any advice on any of these kids listening that think they want to have 4 kids like you and me? What would you tell them?
What you have to do is you have to get really good help. And that was the advantage. Because sometimes, young women ask me, well, how do you have kids and work? One, if you have your own practice, it's easier, because if your kid, sometimes my kids would be with me in the office, carrying around, running around screaming. Have really good help, at home that can help. So you're not worrying about your kids. So I think that's, I always consider the person who helped me with my children was like as important, or if not more important, than one of my staff members. So if you can, pay them like you would pay a staff member, make it an important job, it'll make life so much easier. So that's one thing I always encourage young people is, in your personal life, delegate what you don't like, or delegate what needs to be done with really good people. And then you can, you can have both a great career and great kids and all that goes with it. So
I feel like I can only ask you this. I swear this is the last question. I've been saying this the last question over. But I feel like I can't really answer this because I'm a man. Because
Okay.
I grew up with 5 sisters, so I was very
Uh-huh.
aware of sexism just from my own
Mhm.
family. Like, we lived right by the Arkansas River. Well, I could swim in it
Mhm.
around the clock and fish in it, but my
Mhm.
sisters
Yeah.
had to be 10 feet from the edge.
Uh-huh.
And I can
Yeah.
remember at 10 years old begging my sisters to swim with me,
Mhm.
and then my mom would iron patches on the outside of my knee jeans,
Mhm.
and she put them in dresses. And if they soiled their
Yeah.
dresses, they were in trouble. But she
Yeah.
prepared me with patches on the outside,
Mhm.
and so that sexism, a lot of it's gone away, but it's still there.
Mhm.
And I still have a lot of women dentists tell me, I'm just afraid that even though I'm a woman and I'm a doctor, that if I'm marrying my classmate, he's a man and a doctor, I'm
Mhm.
probably still going to have to be the mom at home. And if she's sitting there like, I want to own my own practice,
Mhm.
but I want to get an A in being a mom. So my
Mhm.
question clearly is, looking back at raising your 4 kids, would you have been a
Mhm.
better mom if you would have given up ownership and went and got a job at Heartland
Mhm.
or a DSO so you could just do the 8 to 5 thing and then
Mhm.
go home and be mom? Would you have been a better mom, or was owning
No.
your own business allowed you to
Oh,
be a better mom?
owning my own business has allowed me to be a better mom because the thing is you could control. If you're working for someone and can't come in, or you want to be there, something special at your kid's school. If it's your own business, all you do is you plan ahead and you mark that out. Like, we're not seeing patients that day, I'm going to be at the school, or I'm doing this. But if you're not the boss, you don't get to call that shot. And a lot of times, women that I know are they maybe will do less days but longer days, or but it's I think it's so much easier to have your own business. And even being a woman and owning your own practice, I think, is easier. And I really feel for some of my male colleagues right now, because there's so much pressure on men to be conscious of not saying the wrong thing, or being inappropriate to kids. And and it made me think, yes, it was last week, there was a little kid who was obviously very upset. And as a woman, I could take this little girl, give her a hug, hold her, tell her it was going to be okay. But you know what? If some of my male colleagues would do that, people might have looked sideways at them, where the parents are like, oh, that was so nice of you, she really needed nurtured. But right now, I think, one, as a woman, if you own your own practice, you can control when you work. You also control who works for you, um, how much time you put in. And then also, it's so much easier, I think, as a woman, to deal with patients. Even if you're a dentist, or you're an orthodontist, so many of our patients are women, and so many of the men that come to see us, I think, are very comfortable with a woman to take care of them and nurture them through the hard times than they would be with a man. So there may be some still, even from maybe colleagues, or some people in dentistry. But honestly, I think being a woman I think women in dentistry is fantastic. Young women have such an opportunity, and a lot of times when you go to different countries, men are the minority. Dentistry is a women's profession in a lot of the countries
In
that
most
you
of
end
the
up.
countries.
Yeah. If you're a communist country, a socialist country, an ex-communist country, they're all women. And there's just, a few men now getting into
And
it.
tell
So,
them why. Well, in a centrally planned
mm-hmm.
economy,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been an army ant. So since boys are 27%
Yeah.
muscle, we do
Yeah.
mining, manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
We do all the dangerous jobs,
Yeah.
military. And dentistry was put in with accounting and bookkeeping. You don't
Yeah.
need
It was,
big
yeah.
biceps. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've given lectures in old Soviet Union countries,
Mm-hmm.
cities,
Yeah.
St. Petersburg, Poland, where they're all
Mm-hmm.
women. And
And I
then
bet, yeah.
so that's the East versus West. That's
Uh-huh.
centrally planned economy that says you don't need to be the muscles of a man. And then there's
Yeah.
poverty. Here's where I wish I would not have been a man. When you go around the world, if there's money involved, all the men are there with suits and ties. And
Yeah.
there's no money there, it's all women. Like in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, there's no
Yeah.
money in teaching, so it's
Mm-hmm.
all women. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
never forget the only time I had to step out of a dental office and take a knee because I started to cry. I was in Kathmandu, Nepal. And
Wow.
I'm trying to grasp this dental office because when I'm in a deal, I don't want to go buy
Mm-hmm.
a purse or or clothes or whatever. I just go to dental offices.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out this dental office. I'm trying to figure it out, but I couldn't figure out the economics of it. And so finally I said to her, I said, in U.S. dollars, I mean, how
Mm-hmm.
much money does this make a month? And she says, well, I'm very lucky. My husband has a job in the military, and he's high ranking, and he subsidized. My office runs at a loss of $100 a week. And I'm in Kathmandu, Nepal,
Wow.
where a Benjamin would buy the nicest dinner for four and wine at a restaurant. And I looked at her, I said, well, why do you do this? And she goes, well, if I wasn't doing this, who would treat all these people? And I thought, man, are you a woman, a woman, a woman? A man would have closed this thing down and taken a job, in the military, blowing people up or, whatever the hell. And wherever there's no money involved, but someone has to do it, it's always a Mother Teresa Calcutta just doing it because someone's got to do it. And she knows the man ain't going to do it unless he gets a big gold medal, a big bronze car, and a big paycheck. And everybody gives them accolades. And those women just show it up because someone's got to do it. And this woman, her hours to lose $100 a week was 6 days a week. She worked Monday through Saturday. And she says, I can't stay home because I know there's going to be a half a dozen people sitting here in severe pain. And if I don't come down here and get them out of pain, they're not going to get out of pain. And I just thought, my God.
Yeah.
But it's not my fault that I don't think that way because I was born a man. I can't help being this damn stupid. But Lisa, thanks for all that you do. You got four lucky kids, a lucky town, Tanzania. Maybe we'll run into each other next time in Tanzania.
It's a big place.
It's a big
Come to our farm.
Come to your farm. It's a 503 charity.
Yep, it is. And actually, we're a recognized NGO in Tanzania as well.
An NGO, nice. But thanks for all you do.
Yeah,
and
thanks
it was
for the
just an
opportunity
honor
to share with you. So
it was an honor to podcast. Thanks so much for coming on the show.